Ladies and gentlemen, it's your host, Double O, the host of Turning Music into Money, and welcome to my show. Today's show is called Music Industry Secrets with Lisa Fager. But before we start the show, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Miss Ruby of Legacy A100. She blessed me with the platform of Legacy A100. Without her, this show was not possible. So, Miss Ruby, I thank you very much. Um, If you want to check out any of my previous shows, go to legacya100.com, and you can hear all my 30 shows that I've done already on the music industry. It's quite interesting. If you're interested in getting copyrights done, contract negotiations, trademarking content, definitely reach out to Nicole Turner. That is spelled Necole, Nicole Turner. Book Nicole Turner at innovativebutterfly.com. If anybody's interested in getting onto Pandora Radio, definitely contact me at turningmusicintomoney@gmail.com. Definitely, if you're also looking to find any of my music, I can be found on Pandora under Double O. That's two different spellings. One is this right here, DUBBULLOH, and the other spelling is DOUBLEO. I have about 30 songs on Pandora right now. Thank you. Congratulations to me. But now we have the preliminary out of the way. I'd like to welcome Miss Lisa Fager to the Turning Music into Money. Now, let me give you a brief summary of Miss Lisa Fager. Miss Lisa Fager is the Director of Public Policy and Operations at the Hip Hop Caucus. She oversees the policy and agenda and advocacy campaigns and works with policymakers, local, state, and national coalitions to advance policies and engage communities in the process. Through her Free Mind venture, she has worked with such clients as the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Def Jam Records, and Hip Hop Voices, just to name a few. Ms. Fager began her career in entertainment industry, working in various markets and public affair roles with CBS Radio and Capital EMI Records Discovery Communications, Inc. She is also the co-founder of Industry Insider, a nonprofit media watchdog group founded to address the impact media has on communities of color. She testified before the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee at the U.S. House of Representatives Subcommittee Commerce about the biased content that people of color face. She also received her BA in English Literature at the University of Maryland and her MBA at Johns Hopkins University. Miss Lisa Fager, welcome to Turning Music into Money.
Well, thank you for having me.
I am so pleased to have you on the show. I met you through the internet. My manager, Dwayne Terry, reached out to you, and I was just intrigued by a clip that you had on the internet with Chuck D and Master P. You were invited to a conference, I would say about 9 years ago, correct?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I actually called the person who invited me yesterday to make sure I remembered when that was. He was like, well, it was a long time ago. I was like, oh,
yeah, it was, but you know, you got in there and you were so insightful. I heard the clip a long time ago, some years ago, but recently it struck me in a different way to actually take what you said and put it into today's terms. So let's get started with how you got started into the music industry, Lisa. Can you please let me know how your journey has been into the music industry?
Well, I started in college. I worked at a local radio station here in DC. It had just turned to urban, which is WPGC here in the Washington, DC area. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they were a new station, so everybody who was there actually went on to do great things in the music industry. People like Tigger, Lisa Ellis, who ran Sony Promotions. Mm-hmm. And some others that have gone on to do good things. And so after I graduated from the University of Maryland, you know, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but there happened to be a job opening at Capitol Records, and since I spent a couple years in radio, I got the job and started artist development, first promotions, and then I got into artist development and actually working with alternative rock music for Capitol Records, and got into, you know, urban music. And so as an artist development rep at Capitol Records, we basically, I work with artists who were recently signed and sophomores to the label.
Okay.
And my job was to make sure stores could sell the music. And so I worked with, back in the day when we had record stores that actually sold a lot of music. I basically schmoozed the people who worked at record stores and those who bought records, bringing artists in, folks like D'Angelo, Digable Planets, Gangstar, folks that I work with, just to make sure, because word of mouth is the best way to sell music, still to this day, right? So when you tell people at a record store and you get them so excited, as soon as you'd walk into a store and they'd say, "Hey, what's hot?" And they go, "Oh, I just went to the Lenny Kravitz concert, or I just saw, Lords of the Underground, or whatever." They're selling your music. And so that's basically what I did. I did that for 5 years. And then I moved on to television. And once I left TV, I started consulting and tried to bring in what I already knew from the music industry. I was like, if I can market music, some that I like, some I do not like, I can totally market things to my community that would improve them. And so I got into social marketing. Hence, I turned into doing civil rights. So I try to use all my talents now to uplift the Black community. And so working on the Hill, I get to work with artists at the same time at Hip Hop Caucus. So it's great to see everything combined now.
Perfect. Lisa, how long were you in TV?
I was at Discovery Communications, which is the parent company of Discovery Channel, for 7 years.
Perfect. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is an interactive show, so if you have any questions for Lisa, please feel free to type them, ask them any way you can. Don't be shy. We all like to get in on the conversation. So, could you describe an average day? Because you worked at Capitol Records, that was your first job, correct?
Yes.
Could you describe an average day for you at Capitol when I guess you were in artist development?
Yes. Well, an average day when I was in the music industry was basically making calls to record stores and asking them about new music I might have sent them, literally through the mail. Now we would probably just email it. But I would ask them, how they liked a certain, because think about it, this is music people never heard, or it's their sophomore project. And so you're trying to push it. And if you can get past your freshman album, hopefully you'll get a sophomore. And so it's really important to make sure that, people sell the records. And depending on the store you were at, it might not be known for selling hip hop.
Okay.
Or the manager there only liked rock music. So he wasn't selling the music that needed to be going out the door because he didn't have an interest. And so, my job was to really talk and make people love the music, even if they haven't heard it yet. And then after they hear it, bring in more and sell more. So typically, go ahead. And I also traveled to different areas and went to concerts. So I did the Mid-Atlantic region, which was DC, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and New Jersey. Yeah, that's how we counted it. And so focused in those areas.
See, Lisa, in that small clip, it was about 1 minute and 20 seconds that you spoke. It was so impactful, it was so powerful that I don't want to get in the way of anything you have to say. So anything you need to interject, anything you need to say, please feel free to say it. If anything that I don't ask, please feel free to express yourself, because I felt like in that clip you had way more to say, but you just kind of held back. But I don't want you to hold back here on Turning Music into Money. I want you to let it all flow, please.
Well, when you're with the legends like Master P and Chuck D, and that was the first time they met each other, so it was really cool to kind of be amongst, just them two talking and, having worked in the industry, and then they were artists, just kind of verified what they thought. And it was a good trip. And so what you saw me on was there's a brother named Bakari Kitwana. He wrote a book called The Hip Hop Generation. He was also the editor of The Source magazine. And so what he has now is called rap sessions. And so he goes around the country, you know, using hip hop artists and people who are in the industry to talk about political issues and engage people in the civic process. Very similar to Hip Hop Caucus, but his is just focused on panels and talks at colleges and universities across the country. And he brought me to the Kauffman Foundation, which was very interesting because that particular panel was exactly what you're talking about today. So it was about how to make music or how to make money making music and not just the traditional ways, which at that time was get signed to a label and sell music. And so, you know, everybody was trying to tell people you really don't need a record label.
Okay.
At the time. And so it pushed forward 8-9 years later, and look what's going on. You don't need a record label. I mean, you don't need a commercial record label. I mean, local ones, you know, marketing is what everybody needs really from a record label. No need for airplay anymore. Do we freeze? Are we back? Can you see me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. So yeah, there's no need for traditional record labels, and that's kind of what I was talking about in that clip. So in that particular clip, I think before I started speaking, Master P and Chuck D were talking about, you know, how shiesty record companies are.
Okay.
And I went ahead and told them the things that I used to do at record labels, right? I used to buy my own records, and I would go to different record stores and have them scan them, which is a way to just up the numbers and sound scan, which is what people look at, particularly people in the industry, to say, oh, this is doing great. It's on its way to platinum or gold or whatever. And so what they realize is that we would budget money to have CDs that we charge back to the artist. And they'd wonder why they're doing all this work and they're not making any money because I'm giving away their CDs for free. But yet the stores would scan them. I would go back, get my CDs, have another store scan them. And this is really the same box of CDs that I would sell maybe 3 times.
Okay. So right now I'm losing you on the visual side of things, but let's not worry about it because the audio sounds great and it's going to be great for radio. But what I want to know is how often would you do stuff like that? How often would you have to go buy the records? How often would you have to do that?
So it really was for big pushes. Artists that were well known, but we saw they weren't doing very well at a time. And then we would just, you know, go buy it. Or it was an artist, for some reason, the label loved to death and it would never sell any records. And they wanted to, how many would I buy? I think a box of CDs back then. So think about it. I really didn't have to buy that much. So I would have, say, 2 boxes of CDs, I believe 25 per box, so like 50 CDs or maybe 100. But I would just keep scanning them. So even though I had 100 CDs, it might have looked like I sold 400 CDs. So it really didn't matter because I was just taking the same boxes with me, scanning them at different stores, and then I would give them a box and then they resell it. And so, you know, just different ways, but I'd always sell a CD more than once or twice.
So what other kind of little tricks were played to kind of fool the consumer on sales or anything like that?
Yeah, well, definitely with radio. So in radio, you always hear about research. There's no real good research. Most of the research that people did in radio was they would call out with music they're already playing or being paid to play. And then, so when you say this is what people want to hear, well, people only want to hear what they hear. We wouldn't test music that nobody heard before. So, and then the other thing was on our side, on the record label side, what would happen was I would buy, say, a group of high school football players and cheerleaders pizza so that they can make calls into the radio station. Because back in the day, they actually literally would count the number of times a person would request a certain song. And there probably was a lot more flexibility in music back in the day because when I worked at the record radio station, we literally would have music meetings, which is something they do not have anymore at radio stations,
At all.
unless they're like, you know, public radio or PFW or Pacifica radio station or something like that. They may have music meetings, but music meetings, they bring everybody into the room, they play the record, we'd be reminded of who's our demographic, which everybody says 18 to 34 women in the urban stations, but really they always skew to men, right? So we'd hear very masculine stuff, but we're like, well, if our consumer is women, why do we keep playing this? You know? But it basically was a team of people that would vote on music that would get on the radio. We didn't even care what their single was. Music has changed so much where the record label tells you what to play. Don't play this single. Before, you would just listen to the radio. I mean, you would just listen to the album and you'd be like, oh, I like this cut. This is gonna, you know, this is gonna feed my artist. I mean, my audience in this demographic. But now, whatever you're playing in Atlanta, I can hear in DC. Before, it wasn't like that.
So what kind of tricks did the record labels play with DJs or with stuff like that? Like, were they paying DJs or did they put that in your budget as an artist? Like, how did that work?
So,
really?
Well, DJ, there are record pools. And so with record pools, you know, you donate, you'd go, oh, this is the record we need played, everybody. You give them the record, give them the money. And that's not too bad, DJ pools. I mean, DJs would still decide what they really want to play. It's the the radio stations that really took the money and would play. And payola is actually not illegal. Payola is only illegal if you don't tell people you paid for it. So if I don't tell you that I paid to have your record played, then that's illegal. But if I said, hey, so-and-so gave me money, you know, or so-and-so is sponsoring this record in a way that I'm telling you they paid for it, then it's okay.
Was radio ever designed to break a record?
Well, public radio is around because it is supposed to serve the public. The airwaves belong to the public, believe it or not. And so that's what it's supposed to serve us as in giving us information. That's what it's supposed to do. It's free for them to use as long as they do what they're supposed to do. The radio stations, that is. The license to have a radio station is free as long as they serve the public. And of course, the license is free, but they get tons of money from advertisers, and that's how they make their money. So, what was your question again?
Oh, I wanted to know, did radio, were they ever designed to like break records? Were they, I mean, like at one point, that's what they did, correct or not?
Yeah, totally. But payola has been around forever. But sometimes payola really worked well for us, particularly Black people, because they weren't really playing Black music. And so it works. Yeah, so radio, I don't know that was actually designed particularly for music, but it was definitely designed to share information. And so records could be broke. Records still can be broke. Less now because there's only a handful of radio stations, quite frankly. There's Radio One, there's Clear Channel, which is now called iHeartRadio. Everybody keeps changing names, but I'll go to the old names, CBS Radio and Cox Communications. And so there's just really basically 4 or 5 real urban, channels.
So
you're gonna hear the same music.
Like now, you saying an independent artist doesn't need radio?
Say that again, you cut off.
Are you out that an independent independent artist nowadays does not need radio to get their music.
No, I mean, you're not going to have, you probably won't get radio airplay on traditional radio, but quite frankly, depending on who your audience is, they're probably not listening to the radio.